The Dune Chronicles. That is the name of the original series of novels written by Frank Herbert over the course of 2 decades. It is commonly divided into 2 parts, the Great Dune Trilogy and the Second Great Dune Trilogy. Why is that? Perhaps because the concept of a philosophical-ecological drama evolved in the author's eyes by the 1980s, when the final 3 novels were published. Frank Herbert, a journalist and war photographer, saw with his own eyes the decline of the Great Depression and the horrors of the Second World War. Still, it would be a stretch to say that personal hardship directly influenced the creation of the Dune cycle. By all accounts, the writer's family lived fairly comfortably during the Great Depression, and Herbert was used to earning a living from a young age. The foundation of the first Dune trilogy lay in Frank Herbert's ecological research, rejected by the official scientific community of the United States of America. Meanwhile, the science fiction writer not only predicted a potential energy crisis, but also saw a direct link between religious fanaticism, messianism, and extreme environmental conditions. Even the religion of the Dune universe didn't appear in the novels by accident. For some time, Frank Herbert worked as a consultant on social and environmental issues in Vietnam and Pakistan. Perhaps this is the true root of the infamous Buddhism. One way or another, the series, completed 40 years ago, continues to stir our minds. And upon rereading the books, we still want to ask, what was it that the author truly wanted to say? Shall we dig into it again? The idea for this book took 15 years to mature before the story of young Paul Atreides was published in the version we know today. The concept was shaped by ecological studies of advancing deserts. The picture was completed by the author's personal views on radical Islam and the deep spiritual practices of Zen Buddhists. It is also rumored that Frank Herbert dabbled in hallucinogenic mushrooms before writing Dune. Strictly for research purposes, of course. The result was an explosive mix. In a very distant future, scattered across thousands of human-colonized worlds, lives and decays an empire. At its head, the Padishah Emperor. He rules over a massive state that has regressed into a feudal structure. This monstrous machine, built upon the complete rejection of computer technologies and artificial intelligence, rests on 3 pillars: the all-powerful Spacing Guild, the Council of Great Houses, known as the Landsraad, and CHOAM, Combine, Honnête, Ober, Advancer, Mercantiles. The purpose of the latter organization was to supposedly ensure fair distribution of revenue from the only planet, Arrakis. On this almost uninhabitable desert world, scorched by a relentless sun, the Empire's most vital resource was extracted: spice, or melange, a substance without which interstellar travel would be impossible. Was produced solely on Arrakis, and became the most valuable commodity in the universe. The great house Atreides, claiming the descent from ancient Greece, ruled its own fief justly and peacefully. The water-rich, paradise-like world of Caladan was home to young Paul, son of Duke Leto, and his concubine, Jessica, a member of the Bene Gesserit sisterhood. Born by his mother, Lady Jessica, against the will of the powerful order, the young man received an excellent education and an upbringing worthy of nobility. And he would likely have become yet another fair and noble duke, if not for a fateful twist of events. Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV Carino alarmed by the growing strength of House Atreides, decides to lure Duke Leto into a trap. For this, he conspires with Baron Vladimir, head of the great house Harkonnen. The Atreides and Harkonnens had been feuding for over 10,000 years, since the days when humanity fought desperately against thinking machines to survive. Of course, the Emperor intended to exploit this ancient hatred to destroy the troublesome Atreides and weaken the excessively wealthy Harkonnens. But, as usual, things did not go as planned. The governorship of Arrakis had changed hands roughly every 1 to 200 years, and this time seemed no different. The stewardship of the Empire's crown jewel was transferred from the Harkonnens to the Atreides. Duke Leto, his family, and his forces moved to this inhospitable, waterless world. That Baron Vladimir might be playing his own game behind the Emperor's back, Shaddam apparently did not fully believe. A grave mistake. In any case, Imperial Sardaukar soldiers disguised as Harkonnen troops actively participated in the treacherous assault on the Atreides. Unable to withstand the Emperor's elite forces, Duke Leto's army lost its battles. The head of the family himself died when the Baron's men infiltrated his palace in Arrakeen with the help of betrayal. With the aid of a few loyal allies and one not-so-loyal doctor, the heir Paul and the pregnant concubine Lady Jessica managed to escape the enemy-occupied palace into the desert. Needless to say, nearly everyone who helped them was killed. During the escape, the young Duke discovers new abilities bordering on clairvoyance. These, along with Bene Gesserit training, help the fugitives survive in the desert. There, they encounter the local inhabitants, the Fremen. It would be wrong to say that the harsh desert dwellers welcomed the fugitive Atreides with open arms. Paul and his mother had to prove their right to live in trials, and the young man even in combat. But the seeds sown on Arrakis by the Bene Gesserit sisters, through their famous Missionaria Protectiva, had found fertile ground. Thanks to the diligent efforts of these women, the surviving Atreides became figures of prophecy to the locals. Lady Jessica underwent the dangerous ritual to become a Reverend Mother and assumed a high position within Fremen society. Her son Paul, recognized as the Messiah, would soon undergo a similar trial. Barely surviving the spice agony, previously inaccessible to men, the young Duke attained a true prophetic vision. This allowed him to unite the scattered Fremen tribes and not only avenge the hated Harkonnens, but also to overthrow Emperor Carino. That seems like the end. The villains defeated, the heroes triumphant, or rather, on the throne. But Dune is not an adventure novel. It is, instead, that very philosophical-ecological drama, where action takes a backseat to the inner spiritual turmoil of the characters. Reflections, sensations, and a terrifying revelation that visits the protagonist. Oh, how well it all began, one wants to say. Closing the final pages of the first novel, young Paul Atreides, having defeated all villains, humanely forces the Emperor to give his daughter in marriage to the victor and to abdicate the throne. Then, he exiles him to Seleucia Secundus, a world destroyed by an atomic catastrophe, yet still the ancestral home of House Carino. The murder of his predecessor was never part of Prophet Muad'Dib's plan. The events of the second book, Dune Messiah, unfold 12 years after Paul Atreides' victory on Arrakis. And what do we see? The noble and just heir of Duke Atreides has vanished like smoke in the wind. In his place stands Paul Muad'Dib, prophet of a new faith born in the deadly sands. All dissenters across the vast empire are crushed without hesitation by the Fremen army, no less skilled and brutal than the Imperial Sardaukar of old. Unable to witness her son's descent into a bloody maelstrom, Lady Jessica leaves for Caladan, one of the few planets that accepted Emperor Paul Atreides without resistance. Muad'Dib himself, drowning in the fog of melange visions, stares with fear into the future unveiled by prescience. His restless soul struggles desperately while Paul tries to step onto the golden path, humanity's only way forward. Rivers of blood spilled in his name drive the Emperor further into madness. Meanwhile, the terraforming of Arrakis is in full swing. The desert, reluctantly but inevitably, yields to the efforts of those who follow planetologist Liet Kynes' teachings. A rift emerges within Fremen society. Not everyone welcomes the change, and oh gods, how right they are. While Paul's pre-born sister Aliyah builds a cult of personality around her still reigning brother with an iron hand, a conspiracy brews in the heart of the Empire. The Emperor's legal wife, Irulan, conspires with Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam and the mysterious Tlilaxu to obscure Muad'Dib's prescient vision. A guild navigator joins the plot. What unites these people, who in other times would have hated each other fiercely? What compelled the powers behind them to unite? Power. In Frank Herbert's strange universe, power means control over melange, the spice from Arrakis, access to which is essential to the Bene Gesserit, the Spacing Guild, and the Bene Tlilax. Spice, complete control of which is now held by the prescient prophet, Paul Muad'Dib. Only Princess Irulan does not desire personal power. Her plan is purely matrimonial. By adding contraceptives to the food of Paul's beloved concubine, Irulan hopes to compel the Emperor to fulfill his marital duty and produce an heir. Alas, the conspirators greatly underestimated Muad'Dib's prescient gift. Though unable to see specific faces, the Emperor knows of the conspiracy. He knows, but does nothing to stop it. The reason is the golden path he has foreseen. Paul is certain it is the only way to prevent the extinction of the human species. The conspirators attempt to assassinate the Emperor, but they fail. Partially foreseeing the situation, Paul is blinded, but survives and retains the prescient abilities he now uses in place of sight. Princess Irulan's plan also collapses. Concubine Chani stops eating her food and manages to become pregnant. The birth of Muad'Dib's children, twins Leto and Ghanima, costs the life of their mother, the prophetic gift of their father, and the lives of most of the conspirators. In this saga, the Ghola, Height, a Tlilaxu-created clone of the warrior Duncan Idaho, plays a vital role. In fact, the role of the main character passes to this Ghola the moment he recalls who the original was. Still wholly loyal to the Atreides, Duncan Idaho helps Muad'Dib defeat the conspirators. But the days of the prophet who has lost his vision are numbered. Under Fremen law, a blind man must walk into the desert and die, so as to not waste the tribe's water in vain. And so, Paul Muad'Dib walks into the deadly sands, stripped of his eyes, his prescience, and the throne of Emperor of the known universe. In this book, the level of moral anguish among the characters reaches nearly heavenly heights. Every character philosophizes, reflects, suffers. For example, Paul's guilt is staggering in its depth. There are no clearly defined heroes or villains in this book. Everyone is a villain to some extent, but only one among them is aware that he is the evil. Perhaps this is why readers still sympathize with the Emperor Atreides, who drowned the universe in blood, rather than with the conspirators. The fall of an idol. That is the central theme of this work. But what reminds me of the prophet who lost himself and his faith in the golden path is a bitter aftertaste. Children of Dune is the third book in the philosophical epic. And here, the corruption of religious power takes center stage. All the atrocities of the Inquisition, radical Islamists, and brutal ancient pagan cults, every one of them, is embodied in the rule of Alia Atreides, sister of Muad'Dib and regent to his underage children. Under the banner of the true faith, Alia continues the bloody jihad in the name of her brother, whom she believes to be dead. She establishes a theocratic state which, in just 9 years, manages to drown in bureaucracy and corruption. What is she doing? Wonder Muad'Dib's old allies. And the answer is simple. This is not Alia Atreides, daughter of Duke Leto and the rebellious Bene Gesserit Lady Jessica. We see only her youthful shell, while a cunning enemy hides deep within her mind, the maternal grandfather of Alia and Paul, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, in the flesh. How did this happen? Alas, the blame lies entirely with her mother, Lady Jessica. Trying to maintain her and her son's status within the Fremen CH, Lady Jessica underwent the ritual of becoming a reverend mother while pregnant. Within the Bene Gesserit order, such a move was strictly forbidden, and not without reason. The unborn child shares the ritual with the mother. From that moment on, the child receives the full burden of ancestral memory from the maternal line. Such children are born as adults, and from the womb they are haunted by the voices of the dead. Alia Atreides drank deeply from this horror. She could not silence the hundreds of thousands of souls fighting to seize her mind, and her frequent use of spice to gain prophetic visions only worsened her condition. Alia struck a bargain with one of her ancestors, who offered to suppress the others in exchange for a small favor. The inexperienced girl fell into the trap, and the sly Baron began secretly destroying the empire Paul Muad'Dib had built. Meanwhile, the more pre-born, the children of Paul and Chani, were growing peacefully in CH Taber, their mother's homeland. Leto and Ghanima avoided spice visions and tried not to consume the spice. This, they hoped, would help them manage their ancestral memory, and they nearly succeeded. Perhaps their approach could have worked for both. But alas, Leto and Ghanima are not just children, they were heirs to the throne, and the Empire had no shortage of those wishing to push them aside. For instance, Princess Wencesia Corino, Irulan's younger sister, devises a devious plan to eliminate the heirs. She even orders the Sardaukar to prepare terrifying Salusan tigers to assassinate the children. She dreams of placing her son, Farad'n, on the throne, although, to be fair, he isn't particularly eager for it. Possessed by her dead grandfather, Alia Atreides also plans to eliminate her brother's children. She even tries to gain the support of her husband, but her husband, inconveniently, is the very same Duncan Idaho Gola, a mentat and warrior utterly loyal to House Atreides. The children's grandmother, Lady Jessica, suspects abomination in both Alia and the twins. That is the term the Bene Gesserit use for what happened to Alia. Lady Jessica is prepared to take extreme measures, leaving peaceful Caladan to visit her daughter and grandchildren, and does not rule out their physical elimination. Meanwhile, a blind prophet mysteriously appears on Arrakis. He preaches a return to old Fremen values, and fervently condemns Alia's rule and her state of religious fanatics. A time comes when all these forces collide. Leto II Atreides, having defended against the tiger attack with his sister, is forced to fake his own death and venture into the desert in search of the prophet. Ghanima, using Bene Gesserit techniques, convinces herself of her brother's death. When Alia takes the girl to Arrakeen, neither she nor Lady Jessica can uncover the truth. However, a direct confrontation with her possessed daughter forces Lady Jessica to flee to Salusa Secundus. There she becomes Farad'n Corino's tutor in the Bene Gesserit ways. Helping her escape is none other than the same Duncan Idaho Gola, now disillusioned with his own wife. Meanwhile, Leto II falls into a trap, having reached his goal, a distant legendary CH. The boy is captured by Alia's agents. They force-feed him spice, repeatedly plunging the heir into prophetic trances, in vain. Leto ultimately becomes a better Kwisatz Haderach than his father, seeing the future and grasping the golden path that had driven Muad'Dib mad. The boy escapes his tormentors. In the desert, he enters into symbiosis with a sand trout, the larval stage of a sandworm. Thus, Leto II gains inhuman strength and endurance, as well as new powers linked to prescience. He finds the prophet he believed to be his father and confirms that it truly is Muad'Dib. Interestingly, Blind Paul had also been captured by Alia's followers, just like his son later, and without his child's help, he would not have escaped their grasp. Together with his father, Leto II rides the desert on sandworms, destroys water reservoirs, and causes serious chaos. After this, father and son arrive in Arrakeen. There, Paul Muad'Dib dies for real, killed by priests of his own cult. However, his self-sacrifice helps the heir reach Alia. With Leto II's help, Alia briefly breaks free from her grandfather's control, long enough to end her own life, shattering the late Vladimir Harkonnen's schemes. Leto II claims the throne. His sister Ghanima names her brother her official husband and consort from House Carino. Lady Jessica lives out her life far from home and children on Seleucia Secundus. Is everyone happy? Not at all. Thus ends the Great Dune Trilogy. The full corruption of religious power, blind faith in a Messiah, and the cult of personality are exposed and condemned. One might wish to believe in a bright future, but no. Humanity now has its emperor, a super being no longer of the species Homo sapiens, and a golden path to salvation that no one truly understands. The golden path. How beautiful those words sound. Yet in reality, God Emperor Leto II Atreides rules the universe with an iron fist for 3,500 years. Over 3.5 millennia. All that remains of the man in Leto is a head and 2 pairs of vestigial limbs, and his faith in the righteousness of the chosen path. Perhaps Leto II, who chose such a terrible fate in childhood, was motivated by the best of intentions. Yet for his empire, the ruler's noble goal morphed into 35 centuries of brutal tyranny. Relentless and methodical, the God Emperor destroyed Chom, disbanded the Landsraad, abolished the Sardaukar, and effectively exterminated the Fremen. Indeed, with the latter, his cruelty was perhaps most extreme. Terraforming Arrakis reached the stage once dreamed of by Liet Kynes and his followers in distant times. The planet was nearly devoid of deserts. Ancient CHs vanished into oblivion, and what remained of the endless parched lands was just a small patch. Sadia, the Emperor Worm's personal reserve. Deprived of their native environment, the Fremen gradually degenerated. Fierce warriors became ordinary commoners. The destruction of most of the desert deprived the Empire of its greatest asset, continuous spice production. All stockpiles of this invaluable substance ended up in the hands of the God Emperor. The Bene Gesserit Order, the secret society of the Bene Tleilax, the Spacing Guild, and other consumers of melange found themselves under Leto II's complete and undisputed control. As for the great houses, he simply abolished them and began his own breeding program. No one expected that alongside the technology-obsessed Ixians, the Great Worm was striving to empower humanity to hide from all-seeing prescience. While on Ix, people worked fervently on null rooms, starships, and similar technological marvels, flouting ancient bans on computers. Leto II bred a new breed of human. To achieve his aim, he repeatedly compelled the Tleilaxu to produce successive Golas of Duncan, Idaho, intending to mate them with numerous descendants of his sister Ghanima and her consort Farad'n Carino. Gradually, the Golas developed aversion to the genetic program imposed by the God Emperor, while simultaneously absorbing the inherent spirit of freedom from the original. Herein lies a true crisis. The first Duncan Idaho was unwaveringly loyal to the Atreides, but was he truly? Literally hundreds of his Gola incarnations were killed by the God Emperor himself. In protest, one Gola openly denounces the flaws of Leto II's theocratic tyranny. In doing so, the Gola declares that he hates the Atreides, a true break from his pattern. Yet, ironically, in asserting this rebellion, the Gola helps accelerate the movement along the infamous Golden Path. Surrounded by loyal subjects, specially bred creatures, and an army of women known as the Fish Speakers, the God Emperor deliberately guides himself toward his own demise. Only the defiant Siona, a true Atreides and the culmination of Leto's genetic program, fails to grasp that this was all part of the plan. Believing that the worm intends to breed them together, Siona and Duncan unite against him. Ironically, after the hated tyrant's death, they carry out his plan precisely. In their descendants, the invisibility to prescience gene, so carefully cultivated by the God Emperor, is forever embedded. Yet, the omnipotent seer still left room in his life for love. The culmination of Leto II's extraordinarily long life is Hui Nori, a girl raised by the Ixians in a null chamber. Though he could not fully see through her, the God Emperor understood that Hui was a finely crafted act of sabotage. His desire to marry Hui, to marry the human part of him that genuinely loved, became the direct road to his downfall. Siona and Duncan Idaho, each driven by their motives, jointly carried out a successful assassination of the God Emperor. It is hard to believe that an immortal being, who meticulously planned the future of humanity centuries ahead, could have died by chance. No, and again, no. Amid tangled dialogues and dense philosophy, the reader must recognize that Leto II orchestrated his own death. Could he have destroyed Ix? Absolutely. Could he have eradicated the Tleilaxu from the face of the universe and dealt with the rebels in time? Again, absolutely. But even the Great Worm's death is not complete annihilation. In God Emperor of Dune, a striking theme emerges: enforced peace. With an iron grip on what remained of Muad'Dib's empire, Leto II ended all armed conflicts. Alas, human nature is such that people only yearn for peace during war. Given peace by coercion, they instinctively seek to destroy the one who imposed it. Homo sapiens simply cannot exist without conquest. So then, was this the Golden Path? The death of the God Emperor in the previous book activated the reverse process of turning Arrakis back into a desert. Leto II's body disintegrated into countless sand trout, which began reclaiming their world. In Heretics of Dune, we once again see a desert world populated by sandworms. The local priesthood believes it rules the planet on behalf of its god, Shai Hulud. 1,000 years have passed since the death of the last Atreides emperor, and even his name is virtually forbidden. In the former empire of Leto II, he is referred to only as the Tyrant. 10 centuries of war, famine, and the scattering added nothing but insult to oblivion for the Great Worm. Clearly, in order to bury the past, even names have changed. Arrakis became Rakis, Caladan became Dam, Giri Prime became Gamu, and Atreides mutated into Odrade. Windswept but undefeated, the Bene Gesserit Order strives to reassert its authority across the territories of the old empire. All the Wise Sisters' genetic programs aim to prevent the emergence of a new Kwisatz Haderach. For some reason, the sisters keep requesting new Golas of Duncan Idaho from the Bene Tleilax, and very few survive to adulthood. Sometimes, the Tleilaxu kill them, and sometimes the sisters do. Everything appears to proceed as expected, until Mother Superior Taraza faces a new threat. People begin returning from the scattering, and what they've become out there, in the uncharted reaches of the universe, is hard to fathom. The new face dancers elude identification through the Bene Gesserit's usual methods, nor do they submit to the masters of the Bene Tlilax, causing alarm and uncertainty among the latter. The honored Madres infiltrate nearly every world under Bene Gesserit influence. These ladies are not peaceful, and the sisters must call upon Miles Teg, a retired Bashar, Mentat, an esteemed commander, for aid. A new lethal threat looms over the next Gola of Duncan, Idaho. On Arrakis, things are no smoother. In a simple village, a girl named Shiana is born, who commands the sandworms. The priests, believing the worms carry fragments of Leto II's consciousness, elevate her as an object of worship. In a quietly brewing battle for control over Shiana, the Bene Gesserit and the Bene Tlilax both believe the girl to be a direct descendant of Siona Atreides. Mother Superior Taraza sends Miles Teg to protect Idaho and dispatches the daughter of Bashar, Reverend Mother Darvi O'Drade, to oversee Shiana. Importantly, both are direct descendants of House Atreides. The honored Madres launch an assault on the Bene Gesserit sanctuary on Gamu. Possessing the ability to dominate men, the Madres seized control of many worlds. Still, why do they seek the Duncan, Idaho Gola? That question remains unanswered. Yet, with the aid of Miles Teg and Reverend Mother Lucilla, Duncan narrowly escapes their trap. Quite by accident, Idaho ends up in bed with the honored Madre Marbella. The plan was simple: subdue the Gola. Instead, they influence each other. Marbella dominates him, he dominates her. And in an ecstasy of altered awareness, Duncan regains the memories and skills from all his previous incarnations, something no one foresaw. Teg, Idaho, and Lucilla manage to flee to Arrakis, bringing their captive Marbella with them. There, Mother Superior Taraza had intended to cross Duncan with Shiana. Sound familiar? But circumstances intervene again. Fearing the power of the honored Madres, the Bene Tlilax masters seek an alliance with their long-standing enemies, the Bene Gesserit. Reverend Mother O'Drade, head of the Arrakis Sanctuary, conducts the negotiations. During talks, O'Drade discovers the ruins of ancient Ch Taber, vast quantities of spice, and the deathbed recordings of Leto II, and these records alter Mother Superior Taraza's plans. Arrakis is attacked by the honored Madres. They do not hold back. The planet is consumed by fire. Darvi O'Drade, Shiana, Duncan, and Marbella, along with the part of the Sisterhood, escape aboard a no ship, carrying the last surviving sandworm to the Bene Gesserit's home planet. Miles Teg falls, heroically covering their retreat. Mother Superior, Taraza, also dies, but before passing, she transfers her memory to Darvi O'Drade, making her the next Mother Superior. Imagine the new leader's shock when she learns from her predecessor's memories that Taraza herself orchestrated the destruction of Arrakis and its sandworms. Mother Superior realized that the God Emperor's consciousness, scattered within the sandworms, still guides humanity along his intended path. To cut his influence from the future, Taraza sacrificed an entire planet and the natural spice. Can the Bene Gesserit now confront the enemy? And can they do so in their current state? Mother Superior O'Drade inherits a difficult legacy. On one hand, not all sisters welcome her as leader. Some openly revere her as a heretic, or even an apostate, like Lady Jessica. Spice reserves are also limited, and replenishing them must be done through one's own effort. The honored Madres have literally scorched all life from the Bene Tlilax worlds. Only one master survives, Scytale, a former face dancer and direct participant in the events of Dune Messiah. Yes, the Tlilaxu eventually learned how to produce synthetic spice, but Master Scytale is not eager to share the secrets of his fallen order with the Bene Gesserit. The ruse that Reverend Mother O'Drade once used to distract the attention of Mahai Vaf, who perished on Arrakis, does not fool Master Scytale. He does not believe that the Bene Gesserit share his great belief or follow the laws of Sharia, and he still carries a null capsule with Bene Tlilaxu genetic material close to his heart. for the youngest master's goal is to resurrect his nation, not to share its secrets. Thus, the Bene Gesserit gained the secret of the monstrous axolotl tanks, but they are far from mastering all their functions. However, they can now cultivate Golas, and Atreides did not hesitate. The young Miles Tegg is raised personally by the Mother Superior, and Duncan Idaho is supposed to restore his original memories. At least, that's what she thinks. Duncan Idaho and his beloved Marbella are forced to reside on the No Ship, by which they all arrived at Chapterhouse, and they share their confinement with Scytale, who is a highly unpleasant neighbor. The fact is that the three of them utterly lack the genetic shield against prescience. Only Shiana, who possesses that gene, can freely move across the planet. But Shiana has other matters to attend to. She has become a Reverend Mother, and closely watches the expanding desert. The sand trout do their work, and soon sandworms should reappear. They may yet save the Sisterhood from total collapse. Like the hesitant advancing desert, Mother Superior Atreides experiences waves of moral turmoil. She understands Taraza's actions, but also realizes that the Bene Gesserit need a renewal. It seems she has begun to grasp what Leto II truly wanted. Meanwhile, the furious Honored Matres relentlessly search for Chapterhouse to eliminate the cursed witches once and for all. One by one, the planets of the Bene Gesserit fall into the hands of the new conquerors. Hundreds of thousands of sisters are forced to transfer their memories, for the Matres spare no one. Somewhere near the end of the story, Darby Atreides realizes that the Honored Matres' return to the old empire was no accident. Something powerful and hostile drove them back from the scattering. Something so menacing that despite their power, they had to flee. Again arises the question, can the Bene Gesserit, in their current state, withstand this new threat? Fortunately, for the majority of sisters, and to Duncan Idaho's dismay, the Mother Superior succeeds in converting Marbella to her cause. Enchanted by the Gesserit abilities, Marbella actively prepares to become a Reverend Mother, and ultimately does become one. With Marbella's help, along with Duncan and Miles Tegg, Atreides organizes an assault on the Honored Matres. Victory seemed assured, until the Matres strike back with mysterious weapons. But then, Marbella intervenes, and she still retains the privileges of an Honored Matre. This matters because these unstable ladies practice succession through the murder of their predecessor. Precisely that is what Marbella must do to save the situation, yet she still cannot save Darby Atreides' life. In a strange but logical turn, the Mother Superior passes her memory to her resolute successor. This undoubtedly saved the Bene Gesserit. Possibly, such an outcome saved even the Honored Matres. Reverend Mother Marbella becomes both Great Honored Matre and Mother Superior of the Gesserit Daughters. She gains immense power and the ability not only to safeguard ancient knowledge, but also to find a way to confront the threat from the scattering. However, she loses love. And what of Duncan Idaho, Miles Tegg, and Shiana? The outcome of the small, bloody war does not satisfy them. One day they decide to flee aboard the No Ship, which had long served as prison for Duncan and Marbella. As a true Mother Superior, deeply carrying the pain of their farewell, Marbella lets the fugitives go, because it was better for everyone. In the final book of the Second Great Dune Trilogy, two storylines remain unresolved. The first concerns a Jewish community tied to a mysterious treaty with the Bene Gesserit. At one point, the head of that community helps Reverend Mother Lucilla hide, but later sells her to the Honored Matres. Most intriguing, the agreement is upheld. His daughter, a wild Reverend Mother, accepts Lucilla's memories and vows to pass them on to the sisters. Among those memories are hundreds of thousands of lives from the planet destroyed by the Matres. The second thread involves a strange pair of face dancers, Daniel and Marty. First, they appear in Duncan Idaho's visions, which later prove prophetic. Is this what led Brian Herbert to conclude that this final Gola is the true Kwisatz Haderach? When Duncan and his companions fled into the scattering, somewhere far away, their no-ship became ensnared by a web laid none other than Daniel and Marty. Yes, the scattering holds many surprises. The two face dancers seem like an elderly married couple. But who knows what they are truly capable of? We never find out. The saga ends with an open finale. The fugitives manage to slip through the trap, and Daniel and Marty cheerfully wave goodbye. They could have stopped the rebels, but they cherish their strange, peaceful existence. Some believe these old face dancers embody the author and his wife, letting the heroes go, refusing to rule their destinies. Whether that's true is for the reader to decide. Perhaps the writer simply had more stories in mind, but didn't live to tell them. Franklin Patrick Herbert Jr. died at the age of 66 on 11th of February, 1986, never revealing all the mysteries of his famous Dune. And that's all from me. If you liked this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Your engagement is the best reward for me. Thank you for watching. We'll see each other soon. Bye.